Hey, Dog Nation, I'm Brandon Adams. Welcome into our Dog Nation postgame show here after G-Day, presented by the UGA Bookstore and Kroger. We're live here at the UGA Bookstore reacting to what was, I think, a pretty entertaining G-Day game. In fact, a lot of the folks we've had a chance to talk to here at the UGA Bookstore have all kind of said the same thing. They like the show they got a chance to see today. They like the fun of that. We'll talk about a lot of that over the course of our time here together today, reacting to what we all saw at Sanford Stadium a moment ago, as the game is their final, and the black team gets the win, 26-23. I had to look see what the score was for a second. 26-23, the final, black team getting the win over the red team there today. So we'll talk about everything that we saw. I thought in terms of what was probably the most fun thing today was the presence of Arik Gilbert, back playing football again, back doing big things for Georgia again, really accentuating what had been, you know, a pretty impressive spring for him. He'd gotten a lot of praise for how he had worked during spring practice. He goes up there today and has a couple of touchdowns, and really on a day that was filled with Georgia highlights. Some of those highlights for Arik Gilbert today were probably as impressive as anything that you'll see. And, you know, for those of you who are with us each week on Dog Nation Daily, we've obviously spent a lot of time as of late talking to Terrence Edwards, the longtime mentor for Gilbert. And one of the things that Terrence, when he's been on our show, has said over and over again is he's seen that smile back from Gilbert. He's seen that same level of excitement and energy that maybe wants to find Gilbert as a high school prospect when he went to LSU and then obviously transfers to Georgia and then made the decision because of what was described as a personal issue to step away from the game for a while. And he did some work on himself, and apparently he's, you know, back and ready to go. Obviously still working on his physical conditioning. That's something that Kirby Smart's talked about. But clearly he looked the part today out there as a little bit of a focal point for that black team on offense. And the guy they threw the ball to plenty. They had a couple of touchdowns, had a chance to even have another one there at one point today. But it becomes very easy to imagine as you start looking ahead of the 2022 season that Gilbert going to be a big part of the Georgia offense. And what's funny about that is that obviously the real pace setter for the Georgia offense a year ago, Brock Bowers, he obviously wasn't able to be a part of Georgia's spring practice. He's still dealing with his own injury recovery. You know Bowers is going to be a huge part of the story this fall. Darnell Washington, another very good tight end, who's also been dealing with some injury. You start talking about, you know, Bowers and Gilbert, who we saw today, Washington, who we've seen before, the arrival of Oscar Delp as a true freshman tight end. That was certainly something that was quite impressive today there as well. All of a sudden you start talking about a Georgia tight end room that was showcasing Gilbert today, but also featuring Delp and others. All of a sudden you start talking about a position group that could be about as talented and as impressive as really almost anything that exists in college football. And I think we are in a day and age now where, you know, a lot of Georgia fans have, I think, rightly questioned, you know, when is the big breakout going to come at the receiver position? And I think that you start looking at the way in which these Georgia tight ends have performed, and now you're left to conclude that, hey, maybe it's more appropriate just to think about pass-catching targets and maybe less about, you know, who's playing a tight end, who's playing a wide receiver, and how you're going to define the positions and kind of subgroups. But just looking at the overall larger picture of things, that this is a very deep crop of pass-catching targets. A lot of those guys are what we kind of think of as tight ends, but many of those tight ends are also kind of flex ends, guys that, you know, have a little bit more versatility than maybe the average tight end would have. But that is certainly on display today, and I thought on a very fun day for Georgia football. I think as fun as anything was the performance of Arik Gilbert back playing football. And I'm reminded of something I mentioned Terrence Edwards a moment ago. I'm reminded of something that Edwards said a couple of weeks ago when I was joking with him on air, because at that time there was already a little bit of hype growing about Gilbert, and I had jokingly asked Terrence, you know, is Gilbert in line for an All-American season, or is it just an All-SEC season? Basically, you know, kind of making fun of the hype that was already starting to grow. And I thought that Terrence said something great at the time that seems even more poignant now. One of the things that Terrence Edwards said about Arik Gilbert at the time was, hey, just being back playing football again, that's the definition of an All-American season for Gilbert, just given how hard he's worked to be back where he is, both mentally and physically and spiritually, emotionally, and couldn't help but think about that as Gilbert was doing some of the things that he was doing here today. That was a lot of fun to see. And beyond just the feel-good nature of it, and by the way, there was some of that for Dominic Blaylock today there as well, but beyond just the feel-good nature of it, there was also the fact that when you start imagining, as I said before, what you know you have from Brock Bowers, But regardless of position, you want that other pass-catching target to really emerge. You want another big-time weapon to emerge to give you something similar to what Bowers gave you a year ago and what maybe he takes his game to in his second year with Georgia here about to come up. And a guy like Gilbert, I think, becomes a part of that conversation for someone who might be able to certainly be a big part of that. So that's one of my first thoughts from what you saw from G-Day today. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts there as well. We'll take your comments at dognation.com, at DogNation on Facebook, DogNation on the YouTube page there as well. Also, a little bit later on, we'll have a little bit of a treat for you as today we get ready to let you hear from an interview I was able to conduct before the game today with a former Georgia great, the legendary Champ Bailey, College Football Hall of Famer, Pro Football Hall of Famer, one of the biggest names that's ever played for this program. Had a great time talking to Champ a little earlier today when I was hanging out with the Players Lounge and the DGD Mafia up there at Creature Comforts Brew House, a tap room, I should say. That was a great time with Champ Bailey. We'll let you hear some thoughts from Champ coming up here in a little bit, including how impressed he is with Keely Ringo right now. This is good stuff from Champ Bailey. We'll get that for you coming up here in just a bit as a part of our Dog Nation postgame show. I'll also give you a couple of other thoughts here as we get ready to take some of your comments. I thought that Carson Beck looked incredibly comfortable today. I think the numbers for Beck, certainly very good at the beginning, maybe waned a little bit as the game went on. But in terms of command of the offense, throwing the football, I thought Carson Beck very much looked the part today of a guy who, going into his third spring year at Georgia, obviously only 2 of those have been official spring practices. Back in 2020, Georgia didn't have a normal spring practice. There was no G-Day that year because of the coronavirus pandemic. But Beck was on campus and was learning something about football at the time. And I thought today, Beck put that experience to good use. He seemed, I'll use the word again, he seemed very comfortable to me, very poised as he was leading that red team offense for most of the day. I believe, and maybe y'all can correct me on this. And by the way, when it comes to some of this G-Day stuff, you're going to have to correct my math on this a little bit because, we're all trying to make sense of everything we saw today. But I believe in the third, fourth quarter of this game, around that time, Beck also got a chance to work a little bit with the black team offense. Did I see that? They kind of moved the quarterbacks around a bit. I think Beck got his time there on that. But when Beck was playing today, I thought Beck looked very relaxed. I thought he looked very much in control of the situation. He did not seem like that he was being, ridden by the situation. He seemed like that he was the guy that was kind of in command there, as you would want a quarterback to be. I thought Beck looked very comfortable in all of that today. I'm curious to find out if you thought the same thing on that. I also thought that Dejon Edwards of the running back spot, and this is not necessarily unexpected news, but just given the fact that there is a lot of attention being paid to Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh. Those were your 2 black team running backs today. That is what you expect to see as your top tandem from the running back spot. But one of the things that I did mention, I think it was on yesterday's edition of Dog Nation Daily, was for a guy like Dejon Edwards, who you think of as the number 3 running back, is he just the number 3 running back? Or is there a chance that Edwards is more than that? I think right now, based on some of the stuff that Dejon showed you today, really accenting what he's also shown you in the football field there as well, I think you have to start thinking about Dejon Edwards as more than just a number 3 running back. This is a guy that I think is a real weapon for UGA. He has been in the past utilized almost like a human victory cigar in some respects, a guy who has gotten a lot of carries when the game was out of reach. And yet we knew even at the time that on a different kind of team with less depth, someone like Dejon Edwards would be playing probably a lot more. And now with James Cook no longer in this program, with Zamir White no longer in this program, there is more opportunity for carries, more opportunity for touches. And a guy like Edwards, I think, seems very much poised right now to step up and take some of those. A couple of other quick thoughts here, and then we'll get more of your comments. I thought today was a very nice day for Oscar Dell, wearing the Georgia uniform inside Sanford Stadium for the first time. A true freshman going through G-Day for the first time. He had a number of catches, I look at the final numbers here in a moment, but he had at least 5 catches here today, targeted at least 6 times today. So I generally think that those target numbers are a pretty good idea of who might be ready to play for the upcoming year. Now, he was playing on the red team, which is obviously a little different, and Georgia's going to be very deep at tight end. But I think Delp today looked like the kind of guy that if Georgia is in a position where it needs to play him for an extended period of time, I think that Delp may be on his way to earning some trust towards being able to do that. Based on some of what you saw today during G-Day, I think that's one of the takeaways you'd probably have there. This is a very athletic tight end. I have talked to Delp a number of times over the course of his time of being a recruit, especially during his senior year. And one of the things that Oscar would say quite a bit is that he wanted to come to Georgia because he saw the way that Brock Bowers was used a year ago. And I think he felt like that was a blueprint for how he could be used. Obviously, that's showing a level of self-confidence in himself to be able to say that he could fit into a Brock Bowers-type space there. But the truth is he is athletic, and he showed you some of that athleticism today. And it is easy to imagine, based on some of what you got from him today, that in the kind of offense that really highlighted a Bowers a year ago, that Delp could also thrive in a similar situation there, too. I thought of all of the early enrollee freshmen, I thought Delp was about as much fun today as about anybody was there on that. So I will let you kind of weigh in on that, but I definitely liked what I saw from him today. I'll have more thoughts for you coming up here in a little bit. We'll also hear from Chan Bailey, the former Georgia great there as well. But here on our Dog Nation postgame show, which is presented by the UGA Bookstore and our friends at Kroger, we'll get ready to take your comments here right now, too. Let me also say this about the UGA Bookstore. You know they had a great collection of autograph guests over the course of the last few days. Guys like Thomas Davis, Isaiah Wynn, Trayvon Walker this past Friday, Jamari Salyer, Quay Walker, and Justin Schaefer this morning before the game. Here's the good news. Even though you've missed your chance to get those autographs signed in person, some of those 5x7 prints, those nice photos that the UGA Bookstore was giving out today for everyone who came by and paid for their chance to get the autograph from these former Georgia players, they have some of those photos that are still signed. So if you wanted to be here for Trayvon Walker and you could not be, there are some Trayvon Walker autographs you can still get. Or some of the guys from today, like Jamari and Quay and Justin Schaefer. I actually ran into a guy a little earlier who had a chance to have a moment with Jamari Salyer, and how, cool it was for a lot of these Georgia fans to be able to interact with those guys that just won the national championship. They were having such a good time doing that. And so if you missed your chance to do that live here today, stop by the UGA Bookstore. If you're still here in Athens, want to swing by and see us, stop by here at the UGA Bookstore, and you can get some of those autographs from some of the guys that just won a national championship at UGA. And, man, that still seems fun to say. It was a truly great day to be in Athens and celebrating that national championship. Love seeing some of those Georgia guys getting their rings today. Just a really cool moment there. So you can check that out. Come on by here at the UGA Bookstore. We are right next to Tate Student Center, right across the stadium. I'm up here on the second floor. I've already had a lot of folks stop by and say hello to me. So if you are still around the Athens area, I'd love to have you come by and do that same thing there as well. So a couple of thoughts from me off the top. Thought Carson Beck looked very comfortable today. Thought Arik Gilbert was a great feel-good story, working his way back to football. Thought Dominic Blaylock kind of much the same way. He was targeted a bunch today, had a nice collection of catches, and a very impressive freshman performance today by Oscar Delp there, too. So a lot of good stuff today and a lot of chance for you to interact. By the way, I have seen some of our legendary commenters stop by already today. For those of you on the YouTube side of things, we've seen all kinds of great folks stop by and see us today, which has certainly been a great thing there, too. I'll also get some of your some Kirby Smart quotes here, too. Our buddy Michael Carvel, nice enough to share some of those with us. That's good. So Kirby Smart was asked directly if Stetson Bennett is the starting quarterback for Georgia the upcoming season. And Kirby Smart says, our team knows that Stetson is our quarterback. Stetson knows where he stands. That's Kirby Smart from just a couple of moments ago. That's seemingly an indication that right now the Georgia quarterback competition is between Beck and Vandergrift to be the backup to Stetson Bennett, as opposed to competing with Bennett to be the starter. This is something that Kirby did a year ago as well, essentially naming JT Daniels as the starter to the media. That was during spring practice. Smart really hasn't been asked this question quite as directly thus far during spring practice, but asked that in the post-game press conference here and giving you a very clear, I would say, based on the text of what I'm reading, unless there's additional context that I'm not aware of, this is seemingly an unmistakable answer from Smart that Stetson Bennett is this team's quarterback. He is the starter there a bit there as well. Also, I mentioned Arik Gilbert, what he did today. Kirby Smart giving you a nice quote on that there today, too, saying that today was a little bit of the icing on the cake. What he's been through and overcome is such a great story, but he's not where he needs to be. That's Smart there on Arik Gilbert. Obviously, when you hear him say he's not where he needs to be, based on Smart's previous comments on that, you might assume that he's referencing the physical conditioning or things like that. Y'all, I've told you this a million times. I am not a bit worried about whatever Arik Gilbert weighs right now. I'm just not. That this is a guy that was away from football, and when you're away from football, when you're used to having that regimen in your life, it can be easy to pack on an extra pound or two here or there. But I'll take a guy who's a little heavy, who's making plays, as opposed to a guy who looks great but's not really showing a nose for the football. And that's right now what Arik Gilbert has proven to be, a guy that just has a nose for the football. And between now and September, my guess is you'll see Gilbert work himself into pretty fantastic shape, if I had to guess. But he clearly looked the part today. And to hear Smart use the words that he uses there, to me, this reminds you a little bit about the stuff with Adonai Mitchell last year, where Mitchell had been praised a lot during spring, and then on G-Day, his performance in a lot of ways affirmed what folks had been saying through the whisper, rumor mill, the whisper campaigns, that A.D. Mitchell had for himself a very good spring, and on G-Day, we got to see that all for ourselves. By Gilbert having happened for him what happened today, and I'd say this is true for Dominic Blaylock a bit too, but for it to have that happen for him today, it is a little bit of a confirmation of the rumors about Gilbert being true. That, when Terrence Edwards has been on our show or other folks who've talked about Gilbert, we've heard good things. And now today, we got a chance to see that with our own eyes there too. One more Kirby quote for the moment on Oscar Delp. He says, and I talked about Delp a moment ago, that he didn't get too caught up in the moment and played well. Kirby's not going to overpraise any of the incoming freshmen, but to have Kirby say he played well, that's probably about as close to a compliment Smart's going to give in a situation like that. So those are some thoughts from Kirby in his post-game press conference from a moment ago. We'll get your comments now, and we'll roll through here and have a good time. In fact, let me make sure I'm on the right YouTube feed. All right, now I'm ready to go. Jason Bowen says, what did you think of the linebacker play today? Obviously, Georgia's pretty thin at linebacker right now, and one of the things I had said some last week was that with spring games being kind of what they are and the way in which you put a lot of handcuffs on the Georgia defense or just defenses in general, they're going to play a pretty vanilla scheme. They're not going to tackle quarterbacks to the ground. Sometimes that, to me, can feel like a less than great showcase for the defense. But I said one of the things, though, you can watch for is if a tackling machine emerges, a guy that's all over the field, that's the kind of thing that translates no matter what. And unsurprisingly, maybe based on some of the chatter, that's what I thought Jamon Dumas-Johnson was. I thought JDJ, they call him Pop. I've kind of given him the JDJ nickname, but I guess everybody else calls him Pop. That's probably what I should call him too. But Dumas-Johnson, I thought was just everywhere around the football today. That was great to see. I also saw a couple of things from Nolan Smith today, and I don't mean to pick on Warren McClendon, but one moment in which Nolan just really got around Warren on a pass rush opportunity where I think that you were made very well aware of why Nolan Smith coming back for his senior season is going to be such a big deal. We've already made kind of a deal about that because of his leadership, and I do think that Nolan was a very outspoken leader for this team a year ago. But this is a guy that also brings incredible speed to that outside linebacker pass rushing situation. He's not the biggest guy, and when you think about NFL pre-draft conversation, things like that, looking at it 2023, Nolan will probably be dinged for his lack of size, maybe a little bit. There are some people I think probably wish he played inside linebacker from an NFL standpoint. However, that speed that he possesses is such a weapon, and if he gets off on that snap count quickly, there's almost nothing that an offensive tackle can do. If you can get your hands on him, you can get your body on him, you might can control him. But his first step is so quick, his speed is so difficult to deal with, and he had a moment or two today, one in particular that I'm thinking of, where he was credited with the sack, where he just showed you what his speed is all about, and I really like that from Nolan Smith. I thought that was fun. All right, a few more of your Facebook, I should say YouTube comments here. And, by the way, nice photos from G-Day on the comment section screen there, too. Maria Ann says Carson Beck was pretty impressive. Yeah, we talked about Beck a little earlier. Beck really throws it well. And there's a certain pace with which you want to perform with that I thought that Carson also kind of had down. I mean, you recognize this across sports sometimes. You know, baseball pitcher, especially at the younger ages, are you trying to move too fast? Are you trying to move a little too quickly? If so, that kind of represents a level of angst, maybe anxiety. Sometimes in golf, you have a tendency to rush your tempo a bit. I didn't think that Beck, if you'll pardon the cross-sport reference here, I didn't think that Beck rushed his tempo today at all. I just thought he looked like a guy who's been on a college campus for 3 years, and I think that's exciting to see. I don't think that's a controversial statement to say that. Kirby Smart, if there was ever going to be a quarterback controversy, Smart clearly squashed all of that with his post-game commentary a moment ago, nor do I think there ever really was, but Smart's words on this were pretty clear. What I've said about Beck is the next step for him is this a guy that you would feel comfortable putting into a game? A year ago, if we're being frank here, I don't quite think that's what Georgia felt comfortable doing. It's one of the reasons why Stetson Bennett emerged as the starter for the UAB game when JT Daniels was hurt. They just weren't quite so sure, I believe, they wanted to play Beck yet. Well, I think a year later, that scenario is probably a little bit different. And if Georgia's starter this year were to get hurt and go down early in the season, maybe even, my guess is the confidence level they have in playing Beck is probably a lot higher than it was before. I think that, we talk so much about transfer portal when it comes to quarterbacks and kind of everything related to all of that. I do think it's important to note, though, the quarterbacks often that have stayed around at their current school, that sometimes their patience gets rewarded. That's what happened for Mac Jones at Alabama. He waited as a class of 2017 signee, really didn't have his big moment until the end of the 2019 season, and then obviously in 2020. But when he finally got a chance to play, the rest was history. He became a first-round draft pick of the New England Patriots. Now he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. His patience was rewarded. I don't like saying good things about Florida, but think about Kyle Trask here for a moment too. Trask waited for a long time at Florida. When he finally got a chance to play, Heisman finalist, he had a pretty big season. That there is something to be said for Carson Beck. His moment might not come this year, but that doesn't mean that it won't come for him at Georgia. I thought he took a step or two today towards really demonstrating that he could be the guy eventually at UGA. Not this September, doesn't sound like, but at some point in time in the future when Georgia doesn't have its reigning national championship quarterback anymore, that it could be Carson Beck's time here in a UGA uniform. I thought he seemed very poised today. We've got a few more comments over here on the YouTube side of things. Hope everybody's having a good time. G. Grace Bama Boy said, "Had the secondary look. I missed the second and the fourth quarter." What do you guys think about the secondary today? How did you feel like it looked? Saw a little bit from saw William Poole today, kind of moving around a lot. Tell me what you thought of the secondary there. We'll see if we can give G. Grace a good answer to all of that. Antoine Simpson. We got to talk about this for a minute. Justin Ratt. We have the. Thank you for bringing this up. I tell you, I got so many things I'm trying to keep up with here. So DSA1 and Antoine Simpson talking about this. So Justin Ratt, defensive back, came in today, committed to Notre Dame. But there's photos on the internet of him. Rhett is at UGA right now, and I'll show you this on the screen. Our friends at On3 report this. They got a quote from Rhett on this. While at UGA, the four-star defensive back Notre Dame commit has decommitted from his pledge to the Fighting Irish. This happening while Rhett is in Athens. So very important that we bring that up here, that a big-time recruiting story for a guy that is in Athens, decommits to Notre Dame while he's in Athens. Could that be coincidental? Quite possibly, it could be. But certainly there have been already some photos out there of Rhett having a very good time while at UGA. I saw him in the stadium a little earlier today, clearly having a good time. And some would say having so much fun that he's chosen to decommit from Notre Dame while here. So, yeah, I did see that. Pretty interesting stuff. Foster Mouse says, is David Daniels suspended for the first half of the Oregon game? So there was the moment where, like, the targeting call got called. You go back and look at the replay. I actually don't think it was targeting. I mean, and I think the targeting call did stand, I think. But they're also not, probably diving too deep in this. But if you go back and look at the replay, at first it was almost a scary moment because Kearis was kind of Kearis Jackson was the receiver on the play. He was in kind of a tricky position, and it looked like it could have almost been kind of a scary type moment. But in retrospect, I don't know that Daniel necessarily did anything wrong on that. But that is a funny comment, though. Let's see what else. Josh Grafton says that Dejon Edwards needs to play a big role in the running game for this upcoming year. I would probably agree with you on that. I think he probably will do that. I think he's probably earned the right to do that, maybe. Let me see if I can get some Facebook comments there as well. And, hey, guys, how are y'all? Good to see you. And do you kind of agree with me that I thought today's game was pretty fun to watch? I thought this was as entertaining a G-Day as we maybe seen for a while. Maurice Farmer says it was targeting. I really don't think he made contact with him, though, above the head, or above the shoulders, did he? Maybe I didn't see it correctly. Robert Maloney says he thinks that secondary might be the biggest concern right now, but I'm not sure who would really be able to test them until after the season, until later on the season. He says maybe by then you've got a lot more reps experience under the belt. I would say that now post-G-Day, you also probably start thinking about what Georgia might do in the transfer portal. And I would say of the small handful of positions that I think that Georgia is most likely to take a look at somebody at. The veteran safety might be someone that Georgia takes a look at there, so that's maybe at least worth considering. David West says offense going to have a lot of weapons. I really felt like that today. I mean, I felt like this to me on both sides, red team, black team. I thought this looked like the kind of offense that could have a good number of weapons, and I have been somewhat cautiously optimistic that for Georgia offense, I thought it was pretty explosive a year ago. I think there's quite a strong chance it could be even more explosive for the upcoming season. I think there's a chance that's probably true. Let's get some more Facebook comments. Georgia and Olive wondering if Amarius Mims had second thoughts. I don't know about that. I guess he's taking his visit to Miami here today. Chris Walshcott says, I thought our running backs looked good. I did as well. There's no doubt that Georgia's got a bunch of guys that I think you'd feel really good about playing. I thought Kendall Milton had a couple of very impressive moments today. McIntosh much the same way. We talked about it, Dejon Edwards a little before, that, you know, in some years at Georgia you've had the tandem of backs, the clear number 3, and a couple of guys below that. And in other cases you've had a little bit more of a muddy picture. I think that Dejon Edwards today made a bit of a case for himself as more than just the obvious third guy slotted below McIntosh and Milton, that maybe Edwards himself is making a play for some more playing time too. And this is one of those deals where I'll admit I don't know that we gave Dejon enough credit when he first signed at Georgia. He was clearly a very good high school player, you know, down there at Moultrie at Colquitt County. I mean, he's clearly a very good player, but this was not, you know, number one running back in the country and things like that. And yet you're reminded over and over again that the most affirming characteristic a running back could have is to have Dale McGee show interest in them, because, you know, McGee for the most part does not have misses. That, you know, the guys that he brings in some cases it is number one running back in the country. In other cases his scouting is a little bit different than that. But I mean, you're hard pressed to find a back that Dale McGee has brought into this program that doesn't have the look of a Georgia running back, and that's before you even start talking about what the fall could look like for a guy like Branson Robinson. So that's pretty good. Randy Hall says, thoughts on the air jumbo in the future, all 4 tight ends on the field at the same time. I'm telling you right now, I want to see it. To me, that what Randy Hall is talking about there is going to be the 2022 version of what we wanted to see last year with Jordan Davis getting a chance to carry the football or, you know, score a touchdown. That's the thing that fans wanted to see. You know, getting 4 or even 5 tight ends in the game at one time for Georgia, I think that's going to be the new, like, flex you kind of want to hope to see from Georgia at some point in time during the year. I think that's definitely something I hope to be able to see. Sonia Prescott says that Cedric Von Prawn and Jalen Carter had a war in the middle. Yeah, that's one of those reasons why I'll be looking forward to going home and rewatching some of this game on television, because some of that kind of trench stuff is stuff that maybe you don't always get a chance to notice quite as well during the game while you're in the stadium, but you can certainly pick up on that later on. I'm hoping to go back and get a chance to see a lot more of that. I saw Carter at one point in time today. He laid thunder. He brought down a thunderclap on one big hit. I believe it was Kendall Milton having on the receiving end of it. But Carter is that guy, man. He is a bad dude. He has bad intentions on a football field, whether it be his teammates or somebody else's teammates or whatever else. He is a bad dude. John Shaw bringing up the offensive line. I mean, I think for right now, you're talking about an offensive line that is still working its way through some things and still trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, there's no doubt come fall, I think if everything holds, help and everything else, that Tate Ratledge is a part of this group, for instance, at that guard position. I think that's leaving you kind of trying to figure out a guy who was hurt today, Warren Erickson, how he fits into that discussion, all along with Xavier Trust there too. That's kind of your discussion related to that. The guy that's working right now is kind of your backup tackle, Ernest Green. This is a guy that we've all said it, and I think we'll continue to say it, that Green's role on this team takes even more importance now that Marius Mims is no longer here. Could Green be ready to be in kind of a backup role, a guy that you would trust? Because let's face it, there are going to be injuries at that offensive line position during the year, tackle included. Is Green a guy that you feel comfortable potentially playing there? Obviously, Georgia getting a way to get him into that 2022 signing class turned out to be a very big deal. A few more comments here, and we're also going to hear from Champ Bailey coming up in a moment there too. Randy Hall says he thinks, and he said this before, that the Georgia offensive line will win the Joe Moore Award here this year. Tammy McGraw saying that Arik Gilbert definitely living up to the hype with the way that he played today. Yeah, I was very happy for him. I really was. Scott Gentry echoing some of that there, too. Very happy with him. Terrell Humphrey says, I love the collection of talent. It was very impressive. Very impressive. Let's see what else is back over to YouTube here for a moment. I'll do some DogNation.com stuff in a minute here, too. Dan Marconi wants to play Oscar Delp at wide receiver. Listen, a guy like that could just about do it, I believe. Mark Morris says running backs catching balls, not as good as we'd like, and some flare passes and short over the middle throws to running backs, not as good as we like. That's the only mild criticism I can give. Yeah, last year's G-Day featured a lot of running backs catching the football a lot, and because Georgia has so many great tight ends, I do think throwing the ball to the running backs is going to be another thing that you see a lot of this year. Like one of the things that Georgia was just very effective with last year was, when you send the tight end in motion, sometimes you put the running back behind the tight end, either on a kind of a short screen type play, or even sometimes a handoff, toss sweep type situation. That just becomes a deadly weapon. That when you've got those multiple tight end and running back sets, it's not just power. What you kind of think of as sometimes it gets called man ball for Kirby Smart. It's more than just that. It's really pretty fun, and I think that Georgia, with how it uses these tight ends, how it uses these running backs, going to be very, very creative in all of that. By the way, Jay Shipes in the comment section, we saw him here a little earlier. That was really fun. Crow King 123 says some of these guys could go start anywhere. Yeah, I was also very impressed with the depth there today. I definitely was. For those of you that watched the game on television, I'd be curious to hear, did anything come up on TV today? I haven't really seen much from the broadcast. I know Kirby Smart was interviewed. Anything interesting come out of that? I'd love to hear that. Any commentary from Greg McElroy on what he saw from Georgia that jumped out to you, or any sort of sometimes the TV broadcast will have interesting inside information, any of that to share today. I'd love to hear that from you. There were a couple of nice moments in the stadium today. As you're well aware, the future NFL guys, the departed players in this year's team, they got their championship rings. That was cool to see. I guess I wasn't quite sure when they were going to do this, but I don't know if this kind of came together last minute or if I just wasn't aware of it. But that ended up kind of working out. We talked about this with Jeff on Friday, where if you didn't get all these guys together right now and do this, you'll never really get them back in the same place, the same time ever again. That once they have their NFL schedules, it just was never going to work. And so one of the things I'd suggested was, well, hey, maybe they will just every off week for these guys, when they have their bye in the NFL, they'll come back to Athens. A lot of times that's what they do. And you could have a series of ring ceremonies for those guys when they came back. Instead, doing a lot of that today was very nice to see for those guys. I thought it was a great moment. You had the 2022 signing class honor today, those that are not playing the game. That was a kind of a cool thing to see. So a lot of fun stuff inside the stadium today. It's our Dog Nation postgame show. We're live here at the UGA Bookstore. My name is Brandon Adams. Of course, we're presented by our friends at Kroger. And by the way, don't forget, Kroger is ready to get going when it comes to Easter. Kroger.com/Easter is a website you can check out. There's like 30% savings on so many of the things that you need to make your Easter complete. And for a lot of you, this is like last-minute shopping. You thought you had everything you needed. You realized you didn't. Well, stop by your local Kroger or go to Kroger.com/Easter, and you can get stocked up for everything there on that. By the way, speaking of getting stocked up, here at the UGA Bookstore, all kinds of folks downstairs taking advantage of the great collection of national championship apparel. The national championship logo looks so good down there on so many things. A lot of folks having a great time with all of that. And also, they had big autograph signings here over the course of the last couple of days. And if you missed your chance to do that, some of those photos of Trayvon Walker and Jamari Salyer, Quay Walker, Justin Schaefer, they actually still have some of those signed photos left over. So if you want to come here and buy a signed photo, even if you missed the autograph signings they've had the last couple of days, you can come by the UGA Bookstore and do that. Right next to the Tate Student Center, right across from the stadium. And, of course, keep this in mind as we head towards the fall, that the UGA Bookstore will have great autograph signings, just like the two they've had the last couple of days here, each and every game later on this fall. So I know you're going to want to be a part of that. Something else I know you're going to want to be a part of is a terrific interview I had a chance to conduct a little earlier today with the great former Georgia Bulldog, Champ Bailey. I'm going to get you to Champ Bailey here in a couple of minutes. I want to take a few more of your comments before we get there, but it's Champ Bailey here coming up. So let me give you a kind of a cool stat here. Our buddy Michael Carvel gives this to you. So 12 catches, 173 yards combined for the Georgia tight ends. Obviously, that's not including Darnell Washington. So that's how impressive the Georgia tight ends were today. According to our buddy Michael here, more than 68,000 tickets were sold today, which is actually a pretty huge number. Was the crowd 68,000? You think so? It was hard to tell exactly, how full it necessarily was, but that's a very impressive, ticket sold number type thing for, there had not really been like that. Like, go back to 2016 for a moment when the huge push took place for 93K Day, and I don't know that it would have been quite such a big push to have the crowd be quite as big here today, but 68,000 tickets sold is pretty impressive. So good numbers there continue to roll in there on that. More of your comments now, too. And by the way, to recap something you brought up a moment ago, so you have Justin Rett, the Notre Dame defensive back commit, decommits there while he's here on the Athens campus. We'll also look forward to getting more information from Jeff Centel from a recruiting standpoint of how the rest of the day kind of played out there on all of that. As a lot of young dog fans stop by and say hello to us here at the UJ Bookstore, that's always a great thing to see. Thomas Van Sanden says for the weather was great. Yeah. Given the fact that you had a little cooler weather, you had, the threat of rain, but the crowd was great today given all of that. And it actually ended up working out to be pretty good. And Christy also reminds us it's Easter weekend there as well. And like for a lot of people I know from my own family, a lot of Easter weekend type plans, a lot of folks that would like to be here kind of couldn't. Like my kids typically don't want to miss G-Day, but there was a neighborhood Easter egg hunt today in our neighborhood. They didn't want to miss that. So, sometimes you just got to have more than one thing going on at one time. And so that's kind of the deal there. Let's see what else is going on. Killa Mime says, I knew God wouldn't let it rain on his favorite team. There you go, Killa. I like that. That's pretty good. Green Soldier says, the most solid G-Day I've seen. By the way, our buddy Green Soldier's around here somewhere. I kind of agree with you. I kind of agree with you on that. I think that this is one of those things where we've sat through a lot of years in which the G-Day game is not always the most entertaining. Some years points have been kind of hard to come by, but this is one of those years in which I thought the game itself was very much enjoyable. I really had a good time with it. I thought it was incredibly entertaining, and I thought it was great. I thought it was a lot of fun here today. By the way, some folks bringing by their copy of the Top Dogs book. That's always great to see. It's been fun to watch the way folks have been reminiscing about the national championship here today. That has been so much fun to be able to do. Great families coming by. Thank you so much for coming by. Appreciate that. Good to see you. Hey, Tiffany, nice to meet you. I'm Brandon. Good to see you guys. Thanks for being here. Thank you so much. So, it's so great to be able to see Georgia fans here. And, it's one of my favorite things to do. And we don't get to do it as much as I wish we did. Obviously, a few times in the fall and here during the spring as well for G-Day. But Georgia fans hanging out and having a great time. So much fun, and we're glad to be able to do that here today. More of your comments rolling through here. Kelsey Collier says, especially with the defense possibly taking a step back, we need a quarterback who can win us games with his arm. Stetson it says hid behind the defense a lot last year. Pretty easy to manage a game with an all-time great defense. And, listen, my expectation, Kelsey, is I don't expect the Georgia defense. I mean, obviously, you can call the 2021 defense maybe the greatest of all time. Seems fair to say, well, maybe this upcoming defense, may not be quite so good there on that. But I think it's important to remember this is still a Georgia offense that scored about 40 points per game last year. That if the Georgia defense had not been best in the country, had it only been good, right? If it had been, go back to, say, 2020 for Georgia defensively, the numbers weren't quite so good. Let's say you didn't have the 2021 Georgia defense. Let's say you had the 2020 Georgia defense. Look at the games that Georgia played last season. You could make a case that the only game that would have truly had a different result was the Clemson game. And Stetson Bennett didn't play in that game anyway. So while it is true that Georgia used a arguably greatest of all time type defense to win the national championship, I think the Georgia offense was also pretty good last year too. Jazz Jackson says the ESPN camera crew was the worst performing position group today. Yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion they're not quite bringing, the full-fledged crew to some of these spring games anymore. I don't know if that's quite the case, but Sounds like there was some frustration with the ESPN broadcast there. Killamine also on the subject of Oscar Delp. Yeah, very impressed with him today. Probably haven't given enough love either to Dominic Blaylock, who I thought back from injury was really very impressive, and I thought that was great to see. Let's see what else is going on here. Chase White checking in. Great to see him. Thomas T-Bone checks in to say it was a very good game. Just hate the interview was cut off on ESPN. So, yeah, I guess I've heard that there as well. Now, listen, if you go back and see our post-game show from last year in Knoxville, we've all had the occasional audio issue. Trust me when I tell you, with Kirby Smart being interviewed live during the G-Day game, that's not the moment you want to have the audio issue, but apparently there was a little bit of that. So I hate that was the case because obviously sometimes you get a little bit more relaxed version of Kirby during one of those type deals, and maybe you get a little bit better type commentary from him. But it sounds like if that was provided, folks weren't quite able to hear that. Chase White also mentioned what happens for Arik Gilbert once he drops, like, say, maybe 15 more pounds, and I expect him to get there. And based on what I saw today, I expect him to be a very dangerous weapon during the season. I don't think it's overselling things to say that might be the case. All right, so really fun times and having a great time here. A lot of, families having a good time and enjoying themselves here today. You'd love to be able to see that. Let's get some more Facebook comments, and we'll let you hear Champ Bailey, and we'll come back and do some more comments there on the other side there, too. Randy Hall thinks that Ernest Green could be our next Andrew Thomas. That's quite a prediction. That's fun to see. Samche Rummerung says, get ready for another year of ground and pound. Bowers and Gilbert will be the only highlights of the passing game. Yeah, Samche, I don't know that I would quite describe what happened for Georgia a year ago as you say, ground and pound. I thought Georgia was actually pretty fun to watch offensively last season. Certainly in the fourth quarter of the national championship game, they were flying all over the place, if not the entirety of the season. Joe Boswell says the audio issues were happening the whole game from field interviews. I hate to see that. I know that's incredibly frustrating. Robert Maloney says ESPN's actually been having audio issues all day, even during the first half of the Timberwolves and Grizzlies game. That's really pretty wild. Really pretty wild. Chris Walshcott says Champ is awesome. Yeah, I thought that Champ was in such a great mood today. Very cool. And listen, this is a guy that's got the gold jacket hanging in his closet. And that's a pro football Hall of Famer, a college football Hall of Famer. You can't hardly be much more decorated than what Champ Bailey is today. So that's really fun. So good comments here. We'll get more of those here coming up here in just a little bit. But really fun comments kind of rolling through here. Pretty good stuff. All right, so here's what we're going to do. More of your comments on the other side. We're live here at the UGA Bookstore. It's our Dog Nation postgame show. We're presented by Kroger. We're presented by the UGA Bookstore. I'm up here on the second floor. If you're here, come on by and see us. Down there on the first floor, all the great famous apparel makers. Peter Millar, Nike, Vineyard Vines, Tommy Bahama, the whole deal. National championship gear. How much fun does it feel to say that? That the UGA Bookstore is stocked up with all your Georgia national championship gear right now. You can come by and get that too. I'll give you more chance to comment on the G-Day game, what we saw today in the black team's 26-23 win over the red team. But first, earlier today, I had a chance to catch up with the former UGA great, the Hall of Famer himself, two-time Hall of Famer, Champ Bailey. He loves what he's seen from Keely Ringo. He's proud of his dogs, the reigning national champs. It was fun today, a little earlier, catching up with him as a part of the Players Lounge event at Creature Comforts Tap Room. So here's a part of our Dog Nation postgame show presented by Kroger and the UGA Bookstore. Let's let you hear from Champ Bailey for a couple of minutes. Then it's your comments to come right after that. And here on Dog Nation, happy to be standing with the Pro Football Hall of Famer, obviously a former Georgia great, but man, sounds so good to be able to say that. The yellow blazer hanging in the closet. How's life been since you've been able to say you're now enshrined in Canton?
It's been great. Not only did I go to Canton or get my jacket, I'm in a College Football Hall of Fame now, and my dog's a national champ. So it's great to be a Bulldog right now.
Life has been pretty good for Champ Bailey these days, right?
Absolutely.
Well, we've had a chance to talk to so many great former players at Georgia, and so many of them have kind of expressed their feelings about this. What was it like for you to be able to watch Georgia bring home that national championship? Obviously, you know Kirby well, but what was it like to be able to see the Dogs finally get it done?
Well, special moment. I think as a Dog fan, we all know it's been a long time coming. And to wait 40 years to get a sniff at it, it feels great. And I think it's funny because when Kirby got here, I was like, okay, he's a young coach. We're not just going to turn that switch on all right away. But I knew he was a championship coach, and only time would tell. So it was good to see him get it before too long.
And I'm guessing it may have been a little extra sweet for you, knowing that the moment that seals the deal is an interception, a pick six.
Absolutely.
For a guy like you that made a living doing that, to see Keely Ringo come out and do that, that had to be even more fun.
Absolutely. You know what's funny is I connected with this kid when he was in high school, not knowing that he would, be what he is. It's just I heard about him, just sent him a note, and then to see what he's doing now and the future that he has coming up for him, I mean, I'm so proud of it, man. And to see him seal that deal for us, I mean, he's forever a dog now.
So for guys like Keely and other guys in the secondary, obviously a lot of talent, high-rated recruits, and yet so much of the early stage of their college career about learning how to play the game, much the same way you did.
Right.
I mean, when you do talk to guys like this, whether it be Keely or others, what do you tell them about, becoming the best version of themselves of players as they can be? How do they go out and take what is obvious talent and turn that into kind of the polished, finished product which you became?
Well, put in the work. I mean, I think one thing about my career, I love to practice. I used to love it. It was hard at times. I would say 20% of the time I didn't want to do it. But I love competition. I love competing. I love polishing my game. So you just got to love the work. And you put the work in, the results will come. Because talent only takes you so far. But it's your mentality, it's the physical ability. All those things you got to sharpen to be a great pro.
Finish with this today with G-Day, Georgia kind of turning the page, kind of a new era now. They're reigning national champions, which means that you get used to having the bullseye in your back, and now people are chasing you.
Right.
As a player, how do you adopt that new mindset of now for a young player, I've got to go out and win my own national championship, or I've got to take that next step? What's it like now being the team that's kind of accomplished the big goal, but now looking to come back and do it all over again?
Well, understanding how Kirby's mind works. Like, he's not even going to let you think about what you've done. It's all about what you're going to do now. So the work they put in now is so important to their season. You don't have time to focus on what you've already done. I just know if they take his lead and they dial in, they'll be right back in that game again, because it just takes that process of spring, fall, in camp. I mean, just day in, day out, putting it in the bank, and then getting the receipts later just from wins. I'm telling you, that's how you grow a championship team.
Champ Bailey, you had a great career. You're obviously a guy that still knows a lot about the game. Congratulations on everything. And I know you got a fun podcast stuff going on. How can some folks find out about that?
Well, UGA Football News. We're all over. I mean, find us on social media as that, UGAFootballNews.com. I mean, it's Chris Hall, Matt Hall, passionate dogs, Chris Burgett, smart businessman, former Bulldog player. So I'm linking up with people that I already have mutual interest with. It's an easy combination. We all want to celebrate this G. That's what it's all about.
Hey, Champ, great to talk to you. We'll see you soon. Good. Sorry about that. We're back here live. UGA Bookstore. Fun stuff from Champ Bailey there a moment ago. And if you missed our Kroger kickoff from earlier today with the Players Lounge at the Creature Comforts Tap Room, great stuff from Keith Marshall. Great stuff from Aaron Murray. First of all, they're doing a great job. Ty Fricks, they're doing a great job with what they're doing there. And Champ Bailey was there hanging out, having a good time today, too. So a lot of fun to be able to see that, a lot of fun to be able to do that. And all of that is on the Dog Nation video channels for you a little earlier from today. But want to give you a chance to check in with Champ Bailey there, right there. Really, really fun. So let's get a few more of your comments here, recapping what we've kind of talked about today. Black team gets the win, 26-23. I think the general consensus from those who are on hand with us here at the UGA Bookstore and also from some of the commenters we've heard thus far is that it was an entertaining brand of football. This was a good show, I thought, today. Really on both sides. There's really very little downtime, very little. It didn't seem to drag really to me at all. I enjoyed that. Obviously, I think that Arik Gilbert's reemergence was great to see, but the collection of potential playmakers, whether it's like a true freshman Oscar Dell playing for the first time, or a guy like Dominic Blaylock coming back from injury, or the collection of running backs, Dejon Edwards making his case to go alongside the Kendall Miltons, the Kenny McIntoshes. It's the kind of offense that has the potential to have a really wide repertoire of playmakers. And it was just a fun time to be on hand there. A couple of injury notes. Obviously, Warren Erickson, Chandler Smith, Tramel Walther. There's some of the guys that were seen before the game. Kind of a little bit banged up, not participating today. And obviously the work here over the course of the next few months about getting guys like that back healthy and some of the guys that you already knew were missing, the Smile Mondens, the Darnell Washingtons, a long list of names there, getting them all back here ready to go there too. So Clarence Dawson said he thought the KM Squared duo looked good. That's Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh, and I would say I thought so there as well. Mike Mazzell says he thought that Dominic Blaylock looked to be 110%. Yeah, I didn't see any ill effects from the injuries that he's dealt with impacting him today. I didn't see that at all. And, I mean, you are reminded of how good of a player he was when he was a freshman in 2019. I also happen to know, like a lot of these players, I imagine that Dominic has gone through a lot of frustrating moments in the last couple of years. I mean, the work to do, the recovery work, the therapy work to do to get back, rehabilitation type work, that is not fun. That is not fun. Playing in front of 93,000 people at Sanford Stadium, that's probably fun. There may even be the occasional moment in practice that's pretty fun because you're out there with your teammates and you're playing the game that you love. But injury recovery, for the most part, is just not fun. And when you're doing it and then you have the setback and you deal with all that, that can be, I would say, at times pretty discouraging. But according to what Kirby Smart has said, Blaylock never allowed whatever potential for discouragement existed for him to linger and become anything bigger, that he really, worked hard to be back in the position that he's in now, which I think is really great to see. Let's see what else is going on here. A lot of folks weighing in on Carson Beck. Yeah, I mean, I thought kind of like what I saw from Beck today. I thought that Beck looked like the kind of guy that's now more seasoned than he's been here in the past, and I think that there's a chance that Carson Beck has a very bright future at UGA. Over here on, what I have not done yet, and I apologize, and they're going to probably be fired up with me here. I have not been to DogNation.com yet, so let's do some DogNation.com comments, and I'll beg their pardon for being so late into getting to them here today. I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes pulling up the DogNation.com comments when I'm on the road is not the easiest thing to do, but it's also not that hard, so I probably shouldn't get too much of an excuse for that. Stuart Wiggins checks in to say that the team looked really impressive. Receivers and offensive lines look very solid. Glad this is my team. Brock looks like a solid quarterback for a team. He says, what a tight end room when they're all healthy. Yeah, we probably haven't talked as much about Brock Vandegrift today. I thought that in a lot of ways, I thought that Carson Beck to me today looked like the quarterback who is a year older. He looks like the quarterback who, I think the general whisper campaign had been that Beck may have been ahead of Vandegrift this spring. I don't know how true that actually was. That's just kind of what the whisper campaign would have suggested. If that was true, that seems to have been confirmed with our own eyes today. I want to be careful not to make too much out of one scrimmage, though, because that is, after all, a pretty small sample size. But I thought today that Beck looked to be the more comfortable of the two in comparison to Brock Vandegrift. Marsh Dog checks in to say, Delp, Bowers, Arik Gilbert will be hard to stop. I really don't know how you do it. I really don't. And here's the thing. I talk about this a lot. And I'm not an X's and O's expert, but I do listen and follow, pay attention to other X's and O's experts. One of the things you see a lot in the NFL are multiple tight end sets used very creatively in the NFL. It is not an easy set to defend against because you leave yourself susceptible to the run. But you also create an opportunity where a smart offensive coordinator, a capable quarterback, can really damage you through the passing game as well. And that is, I think, what Georgia has the potential to do. That Georgia in a multiple tight end set is not power football. They may run the ball out of a multiple tight end set, but that's not power football. That's just creative, good football. When you have an offensive coordinator who's kind of like that, diabolical mastermind type guy, the way that Todd Monken can be, that those multiple running back, those multiple tight end sets just become the additional wrinkle that keeps defenses guessing. If you can put a defense in conflict, you have a chance to really do some big things offensively, and that's what I think that Georgia has a chance to do this year. The folks who are coming away from this year's G-Day with the mindset that, wow, how is anybody in the country going to stop all these tight ends? I think you're asking the right question when you ask that. Greg Clanton also mentioning a couple of big catches today for Arian Smith. And while you get excited about the tight ends, you get excited about running backs, the one element that Georgia, I would say, has probably been missing a lot in recent seasons is the true blazing speedster at wide receiver. Even a guy like George Pickens, who is, we would all say, when healthy, a great receiver, even Pickens is not really a blazing speed guy. Now, his 40-yard dash time for the pro day in the combine was really impressive, but I think for the most part, Pickens probably played a tick or two slower than that while at Georgia. He's not really known as speed as his number one strength. Well, Arian Smith is. Arian Smith's a world-class, track type guy. And, C.J. Smith, Chandler Smith, the incoming freshman, when he's healthy, he can be that too. This is where the Georgia offense has the potential, I would say, to be really fun. How do you pair true elite top-end speed with the other guys who are showing some capabilities of working underneath? Speaking of which, that's also a position, that middle of the field, slot receiver. That's a position that Kearis Jackson can occupy for you there too. And much the same way that Dominic Blaylock looked like a much healthier version of himself today, I thought Kearis Jackson probably looked like that some too. Patrick Ritchie, who was here a little earlier, good to see Patrick, by the way. He says, watching the post-game show live, like what I saw out of Brock Vandegrift, also like what I saw out of Delp. He says, any room for a guest speaker today? That's always fun to think about. So great stuff here in our Dog Nation comments section. Jeff says, any rushing stats? Let me give you the rushing stats. I think I do have them right here. Y'all may have to give me a second to try to read these because my eyes are not what they once were. All right, so here are your rushing stats, if I can pull these up. All right, for the black team, Kenny McIntosh, 6 carries for 26 yards. Kendall Milton had 6 carries for 18 yards. And on the red team side of things, Vandergriff actually had 3 carries for 45 yards. Dejon Edwards had 8 carries for 29 yards. Savon Clark got 4 carries for 12 yards. So that's kind of the story there on the rushing. No huge numbers necessary for anybody, but all the guys really kind of looking good at times. Edwards also had 2 touchdowns, I should add, 2 rushing touchdowns for Edwards. He had 3 catches, too. He targeted 4 times. He had 3 catches. And Kenny McIntosh had targeted 5 times today, had 4 catches. So a couple of those running backs, and not a surprise here for McIntosh. He likely will occupy a role pretty similar to what James Cook had for Georgia a year ago, but catching a lot of balls here today, and Dejon Edwards kind of doing some of the same kind of stuff there. So that's cool to see. All right, a few more comments. We'll get ready to roll on. On YouTube here for a moment. Mark Morris says, I was impressed with our defense shutting down the run game by year's end. We'll have some new defensive line household names. I think that's the case. I mean, we know what Jalen Carter is. I think at this point in time, you should assume that Zion Logue's a pretty high-level player. I saw a couple of things I liked today from Warren Brinson, and it was interesting to see Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins really getting a chance to work with that number 1 defense a little bit today. Some of that may have been due to injury. Jamal Walthour was not playing, but TID was getting a little bit of a look today with the first-team defense. That was kind of cool to see. Mike Roundtree on the subject of the calling of the dogs today. Yeah, that may have left a little something to be desired. Johnny weighs in on YouTube to say, I thought the whole team looked great overall, especially for it only being April, and we suffered huge losses to replace on the roster and many missing players. Everyone looked pretty darn polished. Yeah, I mean, I think that Johnny's comment there is actually fairly well representative of what most people seem to be saying. I mean, for the most part, we've taken a lot of comments here today. I've talked to a lot of people in person here at the UGA Bookstore. I think people, generally speaking, seem to be pretty happy. And I think there's a lot of reason that they would be. Let me also say this. Old habits die hard. I am very used to being here for our fall, post-game shows. And there's always a TV right to my left as I'm doing this. And you're always kind of like looking over there to see what game is taking place while your game is over with. And you just naturally sort of assume sitting here in this chair with all these football fans around here that it's going to be football. But on ESPN2 now, instead of what was Georgia's spring game against itself. They've transitioned to lacrosse between Syracuse and North Carolina. I was just sort of halfway expecting to turn over here and see another football game taking place, and it was instead lacrosse out of the ACC. So it may have felt like the fall inside Sanford Stadium today with some cooler weather and some football, but a quick perusal of what's on the ESPN screen next to me reminds you, it's still very much the spring time of year. A lot of folks continue to also weigh in on Carson Beck. Wildman Slayer says, didn't Beck play against the second-team defense? He did for most of the day. I think he had a first-team look or two there before the day was done. But, I kind of judged the body language on Beck. I thought it was pretty good. I thought he made a couple of very nice throws. I don't know that statistically he probably ended the day quite as, maybe strong. He's 13 of 21. Those are not bad numbers. 246 yards. So that's not bad numbers there on that. Did not throw a touchdown today. Had a little bit of maybe a lull statistically for a moment. But, overall, I thought he had a very good day. I did. Thought he had a very good day. Let's see what else. Tennille, thanks for the kind words. Appreciate that. Let's see what else. SEC Gamer mentioning the Stetson picks. It's important to note on the one pick, he also had a walk-in touchdown, a play before that was dropped. So, a little bit of context there on that maybe. But I think for anybody who wants to make the Beck thing more than it is, I think that Kirby Smart's going to be your biggest obstacle. I'm actually not going to be your biggest obstacle on this. It's going to be Kirby Smart. I mean, Smart gave no voice whatsoever to the notion that somehow, Stetson is competing to hold on to his job. Kirby making that clear that he is the starting quarterback, and that's what everybody on the team is also aware of and knows right now. So that's based on everything they see every single day over the course of the last, 15 practices? That's what that's all based on. And, you can argue with me on that, but simply all I'm doing is going to defer to the guys who see all of this, which is the Georgia team, and Kirby Smart seems very comfortable with the decision that he's made there. Jason Bowen says, I wonder if Oregon's going to wear crazy uniforms for their opening game. I hope we don't. Obviously, maybe memories of the 2011 game against Boise State where Georgia was wearing some pretty crazy uniforms there on that. All right, so let's kind of get ready to wrap up with this. Obviously, Oregon is on the horizon for Georgia. The next time Georgia plays it on television, it'll be against the Ducks, which will be fun. And in the, I would say, immediate future for UGA, you do start thinking a bit about transfer portal. And I would expect to see a couple of new names pop into the portal. And that may be where Georgia looks for its additions. I would say there's at least one or two more guys set to be added to this team. How do you make the scholarships work on that? That's a great question. I don't have any idea. Because as it stands right now, they appear to be over the scholarship number. But I don't think that's going to stop Georgia from still taking a couple of guys there in the portal. Obviously, I would say that outside linebacker might be the number one list there on that. Maybe wide receiver after that, or maybe even safety. That might be, how all that plays out. And then I think you start looking for the immediate aftermath of the recruiting impact of today and kind of how that plays out, including, as we talked about before, Justin Rhett, the Notre Dame commit, at least up until today, while visiting UGA, decommits from Notre Dame while doing that here today. We'll kind of follow that and see what other big recruiting news might come out of this day. Mike Massell says he hopes that Dominic Blaylock emerges as the top wide receiver. Yeah, I would love to see that because I do think that Blaylock's an incredibly talented guy. Probably didn't have his best attempt throwing the football today, but he is certainly a high-value target when throwing the football. And so I do hope to see a lot more from him. For now, we're going to get ready to wrap up our edition of the G-Day Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore and Kroger. As we say goodbye to you here from the UGA Bookstore, don't forget, this is a great place to come by and get all of your great national championship gear. They've got so much cool national championship gear stuff down below where I am. If you're in the Athens area, you want to stop by and shop, it's a great thing to do. Or you can go to UGABookstore.com and do any of your shopping online. And don't forget some of those great autograph guests in recent days. Some of those signed photos are still here for you there, too. So Trayvon Walker or Quay Walker or Isaiah Wynn, Thomas Davis, great former Dogs of the past, Justin Schaefer, Jamari Salyer. Some of those photos still signed if you want to come by and purchase your signed autograph. If you weren't able to be here to get that autograph signed in person, you have a chance to do that there as well. So fun stuff there. And, of course, tomorrow, Easter, if you got some last-minute Easter shopping needs, the folks at Kroger have everything there for you on that. You can stop by and get big savings, last-minute items, whatever else. Save in store or go online, Kroger.com/Easter for a lot more on that. So stay close to Dog Nation. I'll be back with you Monday for the Dog Nation for Dog Nation Daily. Back live on Monday. More G-Day reaction. DogNation.com. Plenty from Connor Riley and Mike Griffith about what they saw from the game today. A lot to unpack. Heroes on both sides of the ball for both teams. Dog Nation will chronicle that for you over the course of the next few days, and then we'll get ready to get going on the 2022 season, which will be here before you know it for the reigning national champs. Thanks so much for being with us here today. Fun to be back talking football with you again after a game, even if it was just a spring game. Still a whole lot of fun to be able to do that. Have a great weekend. Happy Easter. We'll see you again next time.